Welcome to Marketing from X to Z.
The podcast specifically created for small business owners who want practical marketing advice without the hype.
We're your hosts. This is Mike Albuquerque representing Gen X.
And this is Liz Bachmann, our resident Gen Zer.
We're here to share honest insights, real-world experiences,
and tangible strategies to help your small business thrive.
Hey, Mike, do you want to start a podcast?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back for another episode 3. And this time I'm really excited because this is kind of Mike's area of expertise. It's something he's really, really good at. So we're all going to be learning together, which is fabulous. It's totally not why I got him to come and do this with me at all. But Mike has a little bit more than 10 years of experience in like agencies before he started his own business doing this, and now has a branding and website agency, Bear Double. So yeah, I'm just kind of excited to pick your brain.
Hey, this one is fun. When I saw it on the doc, I'm like, all right, let's go.
All right, so let's start with defining what a brand is. When you think of a strong brand, what immediately comes to mind?
Okay, so I did not want to give the cliche answer for this one, which would be Apple, right? The Apple, when everyone asks of a strong brand, it's Apple. It's true. They've done a great job with their brand. But I want to think of a different example here. A brand that I think has really kind of expanded their definition and their value and what they stand for, which is Red Bull.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Red Bull gives you wings, right? It's the energy drink. But how has Red Bull expanded, right? I mean, they started this energy drink company, and they go into sports and extreme sports, and they own Formula One teams, and they own soccer teams around the world. I mean, they keep buying them everywhere. They're buying them in the U.S. and Brazil. They're all over the place. But it's a brand that has taken that concept of like energy and activity and just taking it to the next level, right? Beyond even just their, taking what their brand stands for and letting that drive what it is that their company does.
Almost like an experiential brand in a lot of ways, right? Like I actually met somebody one time who did the round the world with Red Bulls. Like they gave them like a case of Red Bulls and were like, figure out your way around some sort of, I forget exactly what the parameters were, but it fits directly into that. Super cool. That's super neat.
It's such a, like, I mean, it has like an interesting following, and when you think of Red Bull immediately, I mean, it's hard to think of another drink that has such a strong association with something, right? I mean, maybe Coke and family share Coke, like it's a very different target, right? But maybe that's the only other brand that has like such a strong connection to certain values and a certain perspective as their perception as Red Bull does. But like Red Bull, I remember when I was in college, and what do college students do? They work late into the night.
Work?
Sure. Or, without necessarily, well, hey, listen, at one point, finals, let's say finals, right? Finals week, midterms week, the college labs were always full, especially before everyone had laptops. So if you needed to print something, I was in the graphic design department, and so I was having to print and mount and do all the things that my little home printer wouldn't be able to do. So you go to the lab and you're working late at night. And what did they have? They had a college student who was a Red Bull rep, and he would come with the giant Red Bull cooler, which looked like a Red Bull can, and just give out free Red Bulls to everyone there. Help you stay up at night. Give you that, dose of caffeine and taurine, I think it is.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, well, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
When I went back to teach, I was surprised that they didn't have that anymore. I was telling that to my students, and they're like, what? I mean, they're also a lot more conscious about what goes into the drinks now. Back then we just wanted the caffeine.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But I love the concept though of an experiential brand being, because I think that that's going to really play well into like the rest of these questions I have for you. So I think that that's a really cool answer, and I love that. So what do you think with branding often gets misunderstood by small business owners?
I think the perspective that brand is your logo is what a lot of small business think, right? They're like, I have my logo, that is my brand. And the logo is a part of a brand. It's not at all, right? I mean, it has so much more to do with what the company stands for, what the values are, how you position yourself, how you communicate, how does the business relate to their customers, how do they provide the services. That's all part of the brand, right? I forget who it was that said that the your branding is the gut feeling that people have when they engage with you, right? And I think that's very accurate for a small business. So in many ways, like if you have the owner or the face of the business, they are the brand, right, in more ways than others. And yes, don't get me wrong, there's a very strong visual component and there's a reason for it. I'm not wearing my branded shirt here for no reason, right? Or for fun. It's like there's a point to making sure that visually your brand gets represented and repeated and sticks in people's minds. But just thinking that it's limited to that, it's just a very narrow-minded approach to branding.
Well, yeah, if you think about, like, the Red Bull example that you were just talking about, we didn't even mention the logo when you were talking about the brand just now.
Yeah.
You mentioned the experience and thoughts associated with it, not the fact that I mean, I said the tagline, but, like, yeah, it's not like, the can comes into mind, but really what it is the kind of the adventure, the like, that's what that means to me anyway, so that's very interesting. Okay. What about like, obviously, Red Bull, Apple, those are giant companies, with, like I don't even wanna think about how big their marketing and branding budgets are. So, most of our listeners and myself, we don't have those types of budgets to invest into branding right now. Can we really create a standout brand as a small business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, going back to some of the things I mentioned before, right? Thinking of yourself as an extension of the brand, especially for our solopreneurs and, small business owners, then how you present yourself if you go to like networking events, and how, again, there's the visual component of, brand colors and, repeating your logo and all that. But also just like, I think the key thing would really to be purposeful about how you communicate. What are, not just in terms of tagline, but what is the messaging that you're putting out there about the brand? Sometimes it's going to stick to people's minds. In networking events, we often hear there's some folks who have like their pitches really dialed in, right? And they'll have like a little tagline that they repeat, something just to stick in people's minds. If you can create something either visually or, if it's a tagline or something that you speak that creates a strong connection so that folks can always remember that, it's worth something.
So I have I think a fun example of this that I see at networking sometimes. I know someone who owns a insurance agency called Bird Insurance Agency,
Okay, yeah.
and she's always wearing birds
Uh-huh.
and always has a bird joke. And it's what she's known for. And her team does the same thing when they come to networking events. They always do some sort of bird joke or pun. And at first I didn't really get that. And then but now I think that it's what I remember. Like, when
Yeah.
it's very memorable to me, or, like, how I always wear or typically wear something green or floral. It's not exactly the same color, but it's the repetition of certain assets to make people think of the brand. Is that's kind of what you're talking about,
It
right?
is, yeah. I mean, that's the point of branding for small businesses is to trigger something in our memory that just, sticks around, right? And that takes a while, and that takes repetition and consistency. We talk about like a brand in terms of a customer needing to engage with that brand 7 to 12 times or seeing that brand 7 to 12 times to feel comfortable enough engaging with it, right? And that's just the first step. That's not necessarily becoming a true customer or buying or whatnot. And if you think of small businesses, that's speaking in person, that's the bird jokes, that's the bird shirts. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how you get those brand hits.
So, how would you explain branding to someone who only thinks of it as logos and colors?
I would challenge them to just think of the reaction that people have to them and to their business. Right? I think that's how you kind of expand the concept of branding, as if branding is not just this realm of you did your logo, check, that's done, that's my brand. That's a part of your brand. That's a part of the visual expression of your brand. But there's so much more to it, and it should touch everything, right? Your brand should be expressed in a way that you communicate with clients. It should be expressed in a way that you send invoices. I mean, it's consistent throughout the board. And again, not just visually, right, but just in communication styles. Is it more casual? Is it more proper? Is it more technical? And, if you start looking at through that lens of really building out who your brand is, almost as like a, creating like a 3D profile of a person, right? Thinking it from different realms. That's how you start establishing your brand.
I love that. Okay. Very cool. So, I think you just kind of started into this next question, but what's the first step in creating a meaningful or memorable brand for a small business?
So, thinking through things like your brand voice, like the way that you're going to be communicating, the values that you're going to stand for. Right. I mean, we hear like the core values and the mission of the business. Those are things that I think really inform the brand. There's an exercise that I like that's creating like a brand statement, and that takes into consideration both what you want to put your business out there in the world as, but also how do your clients speak about your business? How do your partners speak about your business, right? Not necessarily the people who are buying from you, but who are helping you, who are either referral partners or friends or your community as a whole. And it just gives you different filters to think about that that brand and start creating it.
So, would you mind sharing a little bit about how that shows up with yours as kind of like an example?
Yeah, so I mean, my brand, I'm very purposeful about it not being a brand that is super stiff,
Right.
right? We're here in Marietta, Georgia. We're from Marietta, Georgia, in the Atlanta area, right? And website and branding agencies are a dime a dozen, right? They're all over the place, and they have different specialties, right? Like my background is in the branding, is in the design side of things, so that is the initial perspective that I bring through things, is thinking creating a website not just through as a technically sound website that is going to be, maybe someone who's coming from a development background, they would start with like a hand coded site or HTML or whatnot. Someone who's coming from a copywriting side, they might be thinking more of, long form text or, just crafting a story from that end. I'm thinking more of the visual connection and brand strategy that comes through things. So I try to express that by having a brand that looks and feels different than anything out there. And that is, I mean, you see it in the way that I present myself, right? I have the flat bill hat. I have the colored shirt matching the shoes, matching the watch band. So that when I go and meet someone in person, they look at it and they're like, huh, okay, it's that guy who looks like with the matchy color. And it might be a different color every time, but he's like, or hey, it's that guy with the hat. Or it's got something to do with the bear. And it might go on Google and type in like bear web design. And I should hopefully rank for that, and show up there. But it's just something to trigger their memory, right? What can happen so often for small business owners is you go into these networking spaces, and if you're visiting or if you're not consistent, it's so easy to be forgotten,
Right.
right? You can hand out a business card, and sometimes a business card can make an impression. I had one the other day that I went to a networking event, and they had used like a 3D foil on the text, and it just looked super cool. It's a little bit hard to read, but it was super cool enough to where I was like, okay, all right, this person put some effort into this, right? This is a card they're proud to pass out. So I tailor what I do with my branding personally just to be a little bit different, outside of the ordinary, professional, but still casual. And that's reflected also beyond my presence in, the design of my logo, right? I mean, I have like this bear that I created. I don't love illustrating stuff because I don't think I'm good at it, but I did this one. I think I did okay.
I like
Yeah, it's got some personality. I call it the dumb bear. That's my that's the internal name for him. All my files are dumb bear. But it's fun, right? And that's a little bit different than, the agency that is maybe more a little more buttoned down, or from the one that is maybe not as professional, right? So I try to find something that just stands out from what I see out there, and I think that's the key.
I gotcha. Okay, that makes sense to me. I could see that. What about like a small so we talked about you a little bit, and you are a successful small brand, but do you have another one?
Yeah, I think that locally we have some businesses that if people just kind of you just hear them repeated randomly, right? One of them is Marietta Coffee Company.
Mm-hmm.
That is a place where their brand is their space, right? And if you walk into there, it's a little bit different than every other coffee shop around, right? I mean, they used to, for the longest time, they had like old couches set for you to sit down, or they had like computer chairs on the desk. It felt a little bit more laid back and comfortable, kind of like as opposed to you go to like a Starbucks, right? They all kind of look the same. There's some other locally owned coffee shops that are a little bit, almost feel like a little bit more professional or whatnot. But that one had just had an atmosphere that a lot of folks in my uh, world just gravitated towards. They felt comfortable there.
Gotcha. So it's almost like they leaned into what made them strong in a lot of ways with their brand, right? They leaned into what made them approachable and appealing. Somebody who likes Marietta Coffee Company is probably less likely to go to a Starbucks. And somebody who likes Starbucks and wants to always go to Starbucks is probably a little bit less likely to feel comfortable on an old couch.
Exactly.
So it attracts in the right people.
Yeah. And people go out of their way for it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where you start getting to see that a brand is really working.
Okay.
Right. When you are willing to, yeah, I'm going to drive another like 10 minutes to go to Marietta Coffee Company instead of stopping by one of like the 5 Starbucks on the way.
All
Right.
right. Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's good. That's a really good
And,
example.
and, and it's not like, I mean, I could not tell you what their logo looks like.
Oh, I have no idea.
Imagine
Is
it
it
probably
just
has a
a name?
coffee stain, or yeah, it might just be their name, right? But that's an example where the logo just doesn't necessarily play into the brand or in a significant portion, right? It's all about how the environment makes people feel. Well, there we go. Look at that. They got a coffee mug. It's their name, kind of in a little arch. It definitely looks like a style of logo that in the 2000s, 2010s, we used to call hipster logo. It's like the estimated and the date that it was founded, when it was a whole style that
But what you're attached to is the feeling associated, which is so much stronger than just like a mermaid. Is that what is it a mermaid?
it's a mermaid, yeah.
It's a mermaid, yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Let's see. What are some common mistakes? Like just pivoting a little bit. What are some common mistakes that businesses make when developing their brand identity?
I think making it a little bit too much about themselves, like the business owners you see doing that, or stakeholders, and not thinking it through the lens of the client,
Okay.
right? I mean, we know that in marketing overall, it's not about you, it's about who you're talking to, right? I mean, you could see that everywhere. And so when it is more, hey, my logo is going to be blue because I like blue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hear that a lot. And it's like, well, what you like, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter as much as you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's kinda like for me, like, I really like the earthy green and, like, that sort of stuff, even though my favorite color is actually red. But I picked the green I picked, and I went through the things that I went through with my colors because I wanted people to see growth. I wanted people to see organic because that was my initial specialty, and I wanted to be a little bit different that so I didn't want really the bright sort of stuff, like, that felt, like, off from I couldn't even fully explain it to you, but, like, kind of felt off from the feeling that you should get when you are because I want things to be not calmer because 'cause I'm not a calm presence, but, like, kinda safe in a way, so it was, like, this combination of something I enjoyed and, something that like, a way that I wanted to be perceived.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think is the key, right? I mean, putting like how you want to be perceived, what is the energy that you want to put out there? I think it's there's different reasons to pick a color. Sometimes it's about like new companies when they're forming, and even existing ones when they're pivoting, right? They want to do two things. Either they want to fit in, they're coming in an industry that is competitive, and maybe they're the underdogs. Maybe, they're kind of been like the uh, not on par with certain competitors, and they want to fit in, right? They want to be seen at the same level as the more established companies. And that's a legitimate reason to want to rebrand or to want to pick a color. And then there's companies that want to stand out. They want to come in and they want to disrupt. They want to look different than everyone else. They want to pick colors that are not the usual ones. They want to just speak with a little different tone of voice. Maybe it's a little bit edgier. Maybe it's a little more fun. And, and if that's the case, then you want to look at the industry and see what the standard colors are and go away from that. Right? And say, what am I going to show up as in a trade show or an event that's just going to completely be different?
Stand out. Yeah. Okay.
I worked in a Fortune 500 company that shall remain unnamed, where when they went to the rebranding process, and I was not involved in this, the whole point of the color that they picked was to disrupt, right? And because they were in a sea of blues and greens, and they picked orange because that was a very different color than anything that was out there in their industry. So their main competitors were like green and blue and shades of blue and green together, but no one was really orange, and they liked that because they wanted to stand out.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's very cool. Kind of like Liquid Death. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite brands. I remember best. Like they just. I don't even know that much about them. Except for there's somebody in my neighborhood who drives one of those vans, and I get so excited every time I see. Because who thinks of skulls and energy drink looking cans with water, but now honestly, when I think of a water bottle, and I don't think of like a Dasani or I think of Liquid Death, and that is insane to me because I haven't known about them that long, and I'm not like even like a loyal customer of them or anything like that, but because they've done
Some
such
expensive water.
it is very expensive water, but it's like, but like, it's the thing that pops into my head because they disrupted so hard and so effectively.
Yeah.
So I think that that's kind of
And
cool.
I have a case study that because I talked about Liquid Death to my students when I was teaching college and branding, and that was one of the case studies that I brought up was Liquid Death because what they've done with that industry, I mean, they turned it upside down, just by saying, hey, we're gonna be drinking water out of a can, right? Number one, just the delivery mechanism for it just pushed other brands to go that way. And then with their branding, they went so extreme with it and so outside of what you normally see that people were just attracted to them, right? They found their tribe. They found who they wanted to speak to. And there's a part of their customers who they will buy and drink Liquid Death because they don't drink alcohol. And they'll be hanging out with their friends, right? And it looks and feels and fits a little bit more with a beer can than, with Dasani.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it does. And I actually first became familiar with Liquid Death not through their vans and not through like a shelf thing, but because one of these like really edgy, I guess I'd call her an influencer, even though she never talked about selling it. She never sold Liquid Death, and I don't know if she was directly correlated with them or not, but she was always drinking it, and she was always saying some, like, rough around the edges, like, interesting content.
Product placement.
That is definitely like, looking back on it, I'm, like, mostly sure, but I don't know for a fact because I didn't do the research, so, But, that is how I became associated with it, and that match is perfect for how I perceive the brand now. So, I don't know, I thought it was kinda cool. So, okay, how do you know if a brand that you're making, that you're working on is resonating with your audience in the first place? Like, how do you know how do you check that? What do you do?
Um, well, you can test it,
Okay.
right? I'm a big fan of always getting people's reactions. I mean, I find that business owners often will kind of live in this vacuum
Mhm.
of their own mind,
Yeah.
right? And have and go super into these ideas and brand and marketing included, and you know, just not make anything about it until it's too late. So I always recommend people when we're working on branding, I say, okay, now we're at the point where if we're looking at different options or if we're looking at mood boards before looking at a logo, or if we're looking at that visual expression of the brand as a logo or website, now we're at the point where you're having a gut reaction to this, which is good and it's important and it matters because you're the stakeholder here. But what I want you to do is we're going to take a couple days and I just want you to share this with people.
Mm-hmm.
and be purposeful about who you share it with. So share with people who would either be potential clients or who are also involved in the business or who have a knowledge of the brand. I mean, you can share it with everyone, right? But just measure and create different weights for the results, right? So someone who's not in the audience, who would never be consuming this product, um, doesn't necessarily, their opinion might not matter as much as someone who is right at your ideal client and they're right dead set in the middle. So testing it out, asking questions is a great way for, as you're going through the creation process of seeing what that looks like. Of course, when you go into the marketplace, you're going to get different reactions, right? Based on if you're rebranding, if you're launching a new brand, and tracking and measuring that is important.
I like that. All right. So we told about the storytelling. Did we finish talking about the storytelling?
I think we did. Yeah. It's basically like that before and after of the status quo,
Okay.
right? And going through the hero's journey, finding a mentor, going from the what's called this part I didn't mention, but in the hero's journey, it's separated into two parts, and you have the ordinary world, which for Katniss is District 12, and then you have what's called the special world, which becomes, when she goes to District 1,
No,
or is
she
it
goes to the capital.
to the capital? Okay, all right. It's been a long time. She goes to the capital. That is the special world. Right now, the thing that's a little bit different with her is does she return to District 12 at the end, or does she stay in the cap? She returns, right?
Yeah, and then they created like this like champions village sort of thing. So she didn't go back to where she was before. She stayed in like that weird neighborhood.
So that becomes like her new status quo and where she starts on in the next movie, right? So, but for branding, relating to that story and being able to show your customers and your leads essentially what does life look like without your brand and what does it look like with your brand.
Interesting. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. Um,
You don't even know which question we're at. That's big enough that I can see it with my old eyes.
oh my gosh. No, I you need to watch Hunger Games and we need to buy better tripods. That's where my brain is right now, and that's not helpful for this conversation. Okay. Bringing it back because this is more actionable
Let's do it.
and we love actionable. What can small business owners do to immediately improve or clarify their branding?
Okay, so assuming that said small business owner already has like a logo created for their brand and something that reflects that,
Okay.
then I would say start expanding visually,
What do you
right?
mean?
Let's pick some colors and use them consistently. And it doesn't just mean that if your logo is just blue, then everything is blue, right? But create a color palette. Primary colors, secondary colors, supporting colors that gel well together and that also help create like just colors and color theory, they can have a lot of impact into people, right? So uh, think of that when you're picking a color or if you have like a designer picking your colors.
So is that like kind of because your brand, right? When I look at Bare Double's brand, what I get is like very playful, very energetic. Like I still get the professional, sleek, like put together, but it's more on the fun side of like
Yeah.
and like your website, your business cards. I'm familiar with all of that, right? There's no bright yellow,
There's no bright yellow.
but you're wearing bright yellow.
I am.
But what fits with that is how so I may talk it out to internalize it type of gal.
For it. I love it.
But so like the way that fits is because the bright yellow is still that playful, energetic, like that's how it fits well together. Because I don't know if I'd put the teal right next to the yellow
Exactly.
because that might look a little funky.
Yeah.
But
And a good logo and a good brand will work in different colors because there's always like different reasons for either putting your logo in a busy background or if you're sponsoring an event, having it in different colors. So it should work in black and white. It should work just in black, just in white, in different colors. And the reason, like as far as like the visual brand, that I have the yellow and I have red and I have blue and teal, obviously, and orange and a lot of other colors. They're all bright colors.
right,
So that connects to the playfulness. You won't see me let's say in
beige.
yeah, like super monotone grays.
Well, you wouldn't see you in anything that even closely resembles my brand colors.
Yeah.
Because mine are more muted.
Yeah.
and that doesn't fit with that bright, playful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's just part of the brand, right? If you see my civilian attire, I might have the more muted clothes, and maybe I'm not even wearing a hat.
No.
I know, shocking.
I'm confused. Okay. Um, moving on because I will get fixated on that. What is a sign? What are the signs that a brand might need a refresh or a total rebrand, and maybe also how you would differentiate between which one is needed?
Yeah. So one of the signs that we see with small businesses a lot is just, I mean, it just looks dated, right? Because oftentimes small businesses will have a logo specifically designed that is using more that's a little bit more trendy. Maybe, I mean, we've seen styles that talk about like the hipster logo, or
Yeah.
the maybe more like a kind of handmade look, or things that are more in vogue, like corporate effects. There's a lot of different things that can make a logo look dated, right? So visually, that is the simple cue, right? It's kind of like if you can how you can spot a car that is 20 years old versus a new one, right? And
The shape of the car.
shape of the car, right? So you see the shape of the typography and the fonts and some of the details that are included in the illustration style, which kind of goes up and down, right? In some brands, you got brands like Coke, which have been able to keep theirs, their primary logo the same over time, but evolved other elements of the brand, right? Another campaign specifically. With small businesses, it's a little bit different, but you can always evolve the brand a little bit, and those are in the cases where you just refresh it. If you're if it still resonates with people, if you've spent a lot of money and time and effort into creating an impression in someone's mind of that brand and that business name, then don't change it just because you're bored with it, right? That's Being bored with it is not a good excuse.
No, that's
and
fair.
and being bored with a brand is the reason why when I design a logo, that for me specifically, I hate looking at it, because I'm always thinking like, oh, I like this new font now that I bet it'd look pretty good. I mean, I've done that so many times on my own brand. A little bit easier not to do with my clients' brands because I'm not seeing it all the time, but for my own brand, I'm like, it is done, right? An artist that is never finished, they only abandon the work.
Oh god. Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, yeah, but with that, is that a refresh or is that a complete rebrand?
That would be a refresh. I think the rebrand comes when the brand is no longer aligned with the customers that you're serving.
So that's like a big, big deal. Like one's more of like a cosmetic update sort of thing, like not superficial, but kind of superficial. And the other one is like all the way down to the core.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's knock that building down and build a newer one.
Okay, yeah.
All right. And that will happen sometimes when businesses are changing their names, or, just again, it just doesn't, they've pivoted a little bit in what they offer, or it just doesn't relate to that audience anymore. The audience has moved, and it's no longer something that stands out in their mind. There also are some businesses where they kind of get started with a brand, which I think this scenario is totally fine. You start your business, right? I mean, you're walking before you can run. You get like a logo established and design and whatnot, and then it comes time to put the big boy, big girl pants up and grow the business, right? And invest a little bit more in it. And it's a good time to reevaluate the brand, right? And see, okay, before I really double down on this, before I buy a location and put a sign up, right? Which signs are expensive. Before I, uh, create a new website, before I create all these graphics for my social media, um, when you're gonna be starting to spend some adult dollars on things, that's the time to look at your brand as well, right? And just make sure that it is an accurate representation.
I don't like the amount of introspective thoughts I'm having about mine right now. So,
Just don't look at it. That's the key. Just don't look at it.
oh god.
You're in marketing. You're never gonna be happy with that.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. How much does consistency matter when building a brand, and like how can small businesses achieve it?
So consistency matters a lot, right? I talked about the 7 to 12 brand hits that it takes. I hear from a lot of businesses that have I asked them for their logo and they said, well, we have multiple. And don't get me wrong, you can create like a little toolkit where you have different applications, horizontal, vertical, circular,
Of course, yeah.
and whatnot. But if you have logos that are disjointed and disconnected,
It's just confusing.
it's just confusing, right? And therefore, you're not getting that brand impression, that repeated brand impression. So you want to be consistent because that reflects the fact that you're a trustworthy company. It establishes you as something that people can depend on, right? And also, so you start getting the brand impression standing out on people's minds. Like the way that our mind works, and this is something that I've heard like college professors talk about to their students. They're like, you're gonna remember 30% of what you learn in this class, and that doesn't mean that the other 70% is important, right? But there's gonna be 30% that's gonna stand out. But I'm so excited for the other 70% because the next time you hear this again, it's going to trigger your mind to say, this is not the first time I've heard this. This is important. Maybe it should stick around.
Oh,
And it's the same way with branding.
okay.
Boy, that's why it takes us that long, because our brand stores things by relearning them.
Mm,
Yeah. Right?
that's good. I like that a lot.
Yeah. When I heard that, I was like, that completely makes sense.
That's why I finally figured out chemistry the third time I took it. I never failed chemistry. I just took it I took different versions a couple years in a row, and it finally clicked that third year. I was like, I understand what a titration is because it's been super helpful for my marketing career.
Yeah. Exactly. You needed that.
I really did.
You needed that.
It was important. But we are getting to the wrap up portion of this. We are kind of getting to the end. This has been like super cool. I really appreciated like all of the insights that you have had into branding, because this is, as I mentioned before, like I am not just like gassing him up. Like the branding is really Mike's thing. And so it is really cool to get to talk to you about this at this
When people ask me, what would you do if you hit the lottery? I say I would hide in my basement and just, create brands all day. Design logos and brand guidelines and everything, because it is a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it.
That's awesome. All right. What is one branding takeaway you want everybody to remember from this?
I'll say your brand is not just your logo. It's the gut feeling that people have about you and your business.
Okay, very clean. I like it. If they could only do one branding exercise after this episode, what would you recommend?
Oh, I would recommend the competitor analysis, taking a look at the brands of the competitors around you nationally, the ones who compete not only in the same industry, but um, for the same dollar, right? I mean, sometimes with marketing with, let's say like home services, right? I got an older home. I can choose if I'm going to put a new roof, or I can choose if I'm going to put, new windows in, right? If I need to do both. So look a little bit beyond just your immediate industry, see what your competitors are doing, look nationally, right? And take inspiration from things outside of your industry.
I like it. Okay, very cool. And then what questions should our peeps ask themselves to check the strength of their current branding?
So ask if there's anything about your brand that helps you stand out, right? If your messaging is the same as all the companies that you're competing against, if your logo looks the same as all the companies you're competing against, if your colors are the same, if someone could confuse you for someone else, there's an issue.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap this episode up?
Well, I'll just say that this has been very fun. I love diving into branding and, brand strategy, and just sharing like some insights into how things are organized. So I think we're gonna have to do some more of these from some different perspectives in the future. But this has been fun. And just remember, guys, just keep working on your brand. It's not something that's static. It's something that should grow and evolve as your business does. And don't be afraid to just revisit it.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We're excited to be sharing this episode, and in our next episode, we're gonna kind of flip the roles, and we're gonna talk about social media.
That's right. That's a wrap.